it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen.
The Plague Doctors by Frank Phillips. Part 1. The heretic cringed inwardly in fear as she heard the bells tolling in the distance, where the gallows were, and where her imminent death must lie. Frozen in terror of what was to come, the Leposian guard who was escorting her tugged roughly on the rope tied around her neck. "Move it," he barked. She gave a surprised little jump and looked at him blankly for a moment, before she seemed to come back to reality. Fuck off," she snarled. The guard yanked her off her feet, dragging her along the rough forest floor for a few yards before allowing her to stand up again, the rope now partially cutting off the circulation in her head. "Goddamn societal pig," she thought bitterly. "Thinks he's entitled to drag me over rocks and shit just because I've been sent to the gallows. Accused of witchcraft and heresy just because I don't agree with his materialistic society and tyrannical government. For not supporting a society where you're sentenced to death just for having a different opinion. God, you think that I worship the worm or the blood eater. It's not even like I joined any of the rebellions, or even gave them my support. No. All I did was mention that I didn't agree with our society and government policies. But hey, I guess that's just how us Leposians are. Don't rock the fucking boat, or else we'll kill you." Some, like the woman being led to her death, had always hated Leposian society and culture and felt out of place. Some of them went on to join the rebellions, to try and take down the tyranny and mass consumerism. Some even joined the more radical group, the Plague Doctors. But most, like the Heretic did until recently, instead chose to quietly seethe with resentment, afraid to say anything for fear of being put down by the government, along with the condemnation of the public, most of which sympathized with the Progressive High Alliance, the group of countries that the rebellions were against. But just because the heretic hated the Leposian government didn't mean that she didn't understand why they held such an iron fist over their countries. Political power was a corrupting force. When power was threatened, it could be a scary thing. So they let their greed take over, and the results were nations of tyranny. But just because she understood it didn't mean that she despised it any less. Because, as she knew herself, it was perfectly possible to have self-control and to keep your greed in check. But what I really just can't understand, she thought, is how us commoners can just blindly hate everyone who's different than us. How can we be such fools as to believe all the lies and propaganda that the government spews at us? How can so many people be fooled into hatred? Fooled into believing that anyone who doesn't partake in their ever-changing silly fashion trends is an enemy who deserves to be put down. As these thoughts raced through her head, she could hear the bells steadily growing louder. And as she and the guard trudged deeper into the Azuran pines, the trees grew thicker as well, making it harder to navigate around the protruding roots and massive trees, which for some reason suddenly amazed her. Funny how beautiful nature suddenly becomes when you're about to face certain death, she thought to herself, admiring the awesome beauty of the gigantic pine trees soaring hundreds of feet into the air. Each was layered with delicate bright blue needles that glowed with bioluminescence in the darkness of night. It's hard to notice the beauty of it when you alienate yourself from it, her thoughts continued. You don't learn to truly appreciate the majestic beauty of it all. What gives us the right to just rip it all down? To destroy it all so we can make room for useless bullshit. What gives us that right? Nothing does. But we think we have it anyways. We have the power to preserve it, but no. We just rip it apart and take a giant shit on the carcass we leave behind. Once again lost in her own thoughts, the heretic tripped over a root, and the rope, which was already slightly too tight, tightened even further, making it difficult for her to breathe. Through her quickly mounting migraine, she could hear the eager, bloodthirsty chattering of a crowd in the distance, waiting, hungry for the kill. Part 2. The district judge smirked in barely concealed excitement as he watched the heretic stumble out of the woods, led by a rope around her neck. "About damn time," the little old man to the judge's left murmured to him, scowling in the torchlight. What the hell took him so long? And why in society's name didn't the guard take the goddamn road? "I can provide the answer to neither of those questions, Your High Honor," the judge whispered in response. "Would you like me to ask for you?" "For my sanity's sake, yes, please." "Guardsman Choyle," the judge barked. "Yes, Your Honor," the guard who was leading the witch answered politely. "What in the world were you doing stomping around in the woods? There's a perfectly good road that you're supposed to use. This is a public trial, for God's sake. The people want to give the defendant a proper reception." The crowd booed enthusiastically. "And what took you so long? We have a schedule to keep." "Well, Your Honor," Choyle explained, stopped just outside of the torchlight. "There have been rumors of a possible raid tonight." The crowd fell silent. "A, raid?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor, a raid." "From the plague rebels?" "Yes, Your Honor, possibly even from the plague doctors." The heavy silence almost instantly shifted to a near tangible, cold fear. Plague doctors? "Possibly, Your Honor, but like I said, these were only rumors. They're most likely not true, but still I figured it'd probably be safer to not take the main road, where they'd most expect me and the defendant to be." "I've heard of no such rumors," the judge responded stiffly, if not a little fearfully. Well, then I'm sure that means that the rumors I heard were false, then, Your Honor." "Very well. Just go ahead and bring the defendant up." "Yes, Your Honor." Choyle hissed something at the witch and pulled her roughly along beside him. Once they were visible in the torchlight, the judge was annoyed to see that the heretic's face was swollen and reddish-purple. "Oh, for Trebelaire's sake, Choyle, loosen that damned rope. What, are you trying to kill her before we have a chance to even get started?" "Sorry, Your Honor," Choyle murmured apologetically, loosening the rope slightly. The heretic was marched slowly up the creaky wooden steps by her escort, glaring with resentment at the icy crowd that glared silently back. Without a word from anybody, the rope was removed from around her neck by the hulking executioner who'd been lurking in the shadows, and her head was shoved roughly into the blood-crusted noose that hung to the judge's right. Damn woman should have kept her fucking mouth shut, the judge thought with contempt as the executioner made sure that the noose was set to proper standards. Goddamn witch is getting exactly what she deserves. All good there?" he asked the executioner after a moment. "Yes, Your Honor." "All right then. My good people," he addressed jovially to the stony-faced crowd. "Welcome and thank you for coming here to witness justice from the high society of Big Tree at its finest. Welcome all you fine, faithful citizens, Leposians and humans alike, as well as anybody else who may be present. Why, I think I even see a Sindayan fellow in the back there. Quite a ways from home, aren't you, friend?" "Si," a short, stocky purple man responded in a foreign language, easily heard over his 100+ mute peers. "Well, yes then. To the business at hand," the judge continued with a toothy grin. "As I'm sure you all know, we are gathered here tonight—" "Pardon me for interrupting," the little man to the judge's left blurted, "but I've been thinking about what Guardsman Choyle said about those raid rumors, and I've come to a sort of, realization." "You know what it is that I've come to realize, Judge Rithel?" "What would that be, Your High Honor?" "That I, too, have never heard anything so much as a tittle about this supposed raid that's rumored to happen tonight. No, not a bit." The High Judge slowly stepped forward, rheumatic old eyes glaring at Choyle hard, as if trying to grab his soul with them and strangle it. "You never did answer Judge Rithel's question, Choyle. The one about why you took so long. Would you mind answering that for me, boy? Would you please? I think it may just put my old mind at ease here, because right now it is definitely not at ease. No, sir, not at all. So please go right on ahead, Mr. Choyle. Tell me why you were so late in bringing the heretic to trial. Oh, Your Honor, it was only 5 minutes. Silence, Riddle. Now go on, Chode. Speak. Your High Honor, it's Choyle, the guard corrected nervously. The High Judge's face momentarily contorted into a fit of boiling rage, which appeared to terrify the guard greatly. However, to Riddle's surprise, the High Judge instead twisted his face into a forced smile, which seemed to terrify the guard even more. Please, just simply enlighten me to your delay in arrival. Well, like I said earlier, Your High Honor, I'd heard rumors of a possible raid from the rebellion and... What kind of raid? Rescue mission, Your High Honor. Rescuing who, might I ask? The High Judge pressed, steadily advancing upon Choyle. The defendant here, so that she could go back to the plague rebels, Your High Honor. The High Judge, now within an inch of the guard's face, sneered nastily, revealing a set of pearly, crooked white teeth. Plague rebels, huh? That's what I heard, Your High Honor. And you're sure about this? I think so. Are you sure, Choyle? Yes, Your High Honor. The High Judge stared up into Choyle's anxious face for a moment before letting out a wolfish bark of laughter, swinging towards the crowd with a wild grin and a manic gleam in his eyes. You hear that? He screeched at the unsettled audience. Guardsman Choyle says that the plague rebels might try to pull off some kind of rescue mission to take back our lovely witch here. Further proof that this bitch, he kicked her smartly in the shin for emphasis, is yet another spy in our midst. This sent the crowd murmuring amongst themselves and throwing frightened glances towards the glowing blue trees behind them. Now, tell me, Choyle, who was it that was telling you of these rumors? The guard gave a sort of non-committal shrug. Just heard it around, Your High Honor. The High Judge scoffed quietly, once again within an inch of Choyle's face. Just heard it around, eh? Choyle nodded nervously, catching Judge Riddle's eye, begging for help. But Riddle knew better than to interrupt. Besides, this little chewing out by the High Judge was a good reminder to the people to always be afraid of their superiors. People who were afraid were easy to control. It was when they weren't afraid that they became dangerous. You know, as High Judge of Bigotry, I'm kept pretty well in the loop of the enemy's plans and activities, even if only rumored. And, as I said earlier, I've not heard one bit about this supposed rescue mission. And who did you clear your woodland detour with? Nobody, Your High Honor. The High Judge paused. You cleared that with nobody? Nobody at all? No, Your High Honor. The High Judge shook his head, chuckling in disbelief. You know what, Choyle? He said quietly to the guard. I could have you arrested right here, and right now, just for that little stunt right there. Serious stuff it is. Is that what you want, Choyle? Not really, Your Honor. The High Judge paused again. What did you just say? He asked in a dangerously low voice. I said, not really, Your High Honor. No, I asked what you said. That's what I said, Your High Honor. Don't you lie to me. Don't you dare fucking lie to me, Guardsman Choyle. I'm not lying, Your High Honor. Face purple with rage, the High Judge grabbed Choyle by the back of the neck and whipped him around to face the silent audience. faithful people of bigotry. Do you see this man? This man who is so unpatriotic as to lie to a representative of the high society? You know what this is? This is treason. Heresy right before your very eyes. Is this the kind of behavior we tolerate here in our own country? There was a moment of low murmuring before anybody in the audience spoke. Your High Honor? A man in the front of the crowd asked confusedly. With all due respect, what is it that Guardsman Choyle said? We're not entirely sure we know what it is you're getting at here. The High Judge paused for a moment, clearly annoyed at the people for not picking up on the guard's little slip-up. What Guardsman Chucklehead here said was, "Not really, Your Honor." This man deliberately left out the word high in Your High Honor, disrespecting me and thus in turn disrespecting the state. And who disrespects the state? The enemy, the crowd cried enthusiastically. Oh yeah, the enemy. And do we just allow the enemy to get away with blasphemy? Hell no. That's right. Now, Guardsman Choyle. The High Judge addressed to the guard, who looked like he might pass out from fright at any moment. Since we have undeniably established that you are in fact an enemy of the state based upon your behavior, how am I supposed to trust what you say, huh? How can I? Convince me. I don't know. How do I know that you weren't in fact meeting with the plague rebels in the woods? Oh sure, how convenient that you just happened to hear these rumors. Now nobody would suspect you of a thing. I see right through you, buddy. Yeah, several people in the crowd agreed. The High Judge turned back to the crowd, an expression of mixed pleading and revulsion on his face. Don't you people see what this is? The High Judge begged the audience. It's clearly an attempt to assassinate Judge Rithel and I. By Trebler's name, Rithel thought to himself in disbelief. The stories are true. This man truly is insane. Good God, he cried. I can't believe it. How could I not have seen it before? To think that I call myself a judge. Hi, Judge Snidler, you're a goddamn genius. This was met with a resounding cheer from the crowd. Yes, yes, Judge Rithel continued with enthusiasm. It's all clear now. My good people, I'll tell you exactly what was going to happen. Here, you see, while Judge Snidler and I would be too busy with the trial of our witch here, Groundsman Choyle would take the chance to kill us both when our guard was down, and that would be the cue for the plague rebels to come in and rescue them. And why not? You'd be killing 3 birds with one stone, so to speak. Well, guess what? Their plan has been foiled by our good man, High Judge Snidler. Guards, scout the perimeter for any ambushes waiting to attack. We will not be terrorized this way. The crowd gave another deafening cheer, many of whom were praising the 2 judges and cursing the guardsman and the heretic. Now then, High Judge Snidler announced, after the noise had died down. I think that tonight warrants some additional punishment. Wouldn't you say, Judge Rithel? Yes, I would, Your High Honor. What sort of punishment would you suggest? The High Judge took a moment to think, before announcing theatrically that he knew of the perfect punishment to inflict upon the ashen-faced guards. And what would that be, Your High Honor? Judge Rithel asked in staged confusion, though he had a pretty good idea as to what the High Judge had in mind. Allow me to demonstrate. May I have a volunteer from the crowd, please? Almost every hand in the audience catapulted straight into the air. The High Judge pretended to be taken aback and then, after a moment, called upon the Sindayan man in the back that had been pointed out by Judge Rithel earlier. It's always good to see our allies from afar be willing to shamelessly prove their devotion to the High Alliance, the High Judge remarked as the short purple man shouldered his way through the jealous crowd. Thank you. he said graciously to the Sindayan man as he finally made it up to the creaky wooden platform. He shook his hand generously, smiling as he looked into the volunteer's eyes, which were completely black with large white pupils. "What's your name, my friend?"
Payalo.
"Well, Payalo, how do you like it here in Bigoltree?"
Cold, but yeah, good. Yeah,
he answered with a heavy accent. "Yes, quite a difference from your home in Sindaya, isn't it?" Payalo nodded with a polite grin on his face. "Well, Payalo, the first thing that I'm going to have to ask you is to take this knife here," the High Judge told him, pulling out an intricately designed knife with a white and gold handle and a blade as big as his forearm. "I'm going to need you to do exactly as I say, and I mean exactly. Oh, and Wallace?" he addressed to the silent, hulking executioner standing at the back of the platform. "Could you please restrain Guardsman Choyle there? He's been edging back towards the stairs, and I'm afraid that he might try to make a run for it." "Thank you. Now, Payalo, do you have a weak stomach?"
"No, High Honor,"
he assured, shaking his head. "Good. Now the first request that I shall make is that you cut off his feet just below the ankles. Don't worry about him bleeding out. Our good doctor over there will make sure that he doesn't. Doctor, get over here. And Wallace, make sure that Choyle is watching the entire time. I don't care if you have to hold his goddamn eyelids open with your own 5 fingers. Just make sure that it's done. Good. Stop that piggish whimpering, Choyle. Have some fucking dignity, man." The High Judge then stepped back as Payalo stepped forward and expertly sliced off Choyle's left foot with a sickening crunch. "Well done, Payalo," High Judge Snittler praised over Choyle's screams. Judge Riddle could tell that he was, strangely enough, genuinely impressed. "Very swift and very clean. What is it that you said you do in the war?"
"Torture,"
Payalo answered bluntly as he stepped aside for the doctor and quickly chopped off Choyle's right foot, thrusting him into a fresh frenzy of thrashes and screams. "Well, I certainly did pick the right man for the job, didn't I?" High Judge Snittler remarked, chuckling along warmly with the crowd. "Now, would you please cut off the hands, just below the wrists, please?" Part 3. God, they're giving him the pain, the capture man realized from atop his perch in the trees. He quickly readjusted the imager and turned his head just in time to avoid seeing the next step in the guard's torture, though that didn't stop him from hearing the thunk of the blade and the guard's screams as his hands were sliced off. Bracing himself, he opened his eyes once more to point the imager in the direction of the district judge as he tossed the dismembered hands to the cheering crowd, smiling and waving with professional showmanship. "Next, I would like you to cut off his nose, Payalo. We're going to make him look like the monster that he really is." God, I'm going to fucking puke, the capture man thought as the guard's head was pulled back. Choyle's nose was sliced off too quickly for him to shut his eyes against it. "Oh, quit your blubbering, you pansy," the High Judge snapped as Choyle's blood-clogged screams filled the air, battling with the raucous cheering and jeering from the crowd. The capture man never ceased to marvel at the seemingly endless bloodlust people had when worked into a frenzy, and he never ceased to be amazed by how easily they were manipulated either, especially when gathered into crowds like this. "Now cut out his tongue. Let him talk to those heathens now. I'm sure he'll get far." The guardsman's garbled shrieks ripped through the air, shredding any last decency left in the crowd, acting as the final fuel for their raging fire.
"Kill him,"
they cried.
"Just kill the fucker already. Take his eyes, take his ears."
"Snittler," Riddle screeched, beating off the ravenous crowd with his bare hands. "Help me." The capture man slowly shook his head in quiet disappointment at the rowdy crowd below. "Animals," he whispered to himself. "They're a bunch of goddamned animals." Ialo, cut out his eyes and give them to me, the High Judge ordered. The crowd needs more.
Merci, High Honor.
Ialo then quickly used his fingers to gouge out Choyle's eyes and handed them to the High Judge, who held them aloft and cried, "You see, we have justice. Justice in the hands of professionals and not amateurs such as yourselves. Because justice in the hands of the untrained is a very, very dangerous thing. It's a delicate balance, justice. So it must be up to people who know what they are doing to administer it, so that we can continue to uphold our beloved society and thriving culture. When this is not done, not held up, we fall into savage barbarianism, which is exactly what is happening to those traitorous black magicians that call themselves the Plague Rebels and Plague Doctors. Is that what you want for yourselves? No? Then contain yourselves, people. Don't fall into frenzy for naught. We call ourselves the High Society for a reason. We are gentlemen, we are ladies, and, most importantly, we are civilized. Could have fooled me, the capture man scoffed inwardly. You first for his death, the High Judge continued. But do you even realize what we've done to him, do you? He let the question hang in the heavy, silent air for a moment, acting as though we were waiting for an answer, even though he knew none would come. We have given him a fate worse than death, he screamed, spit flying out of his mouth. A fate worse than exile. We have given him the pain. He will go today a free man. He will still be a part of the High Arms, but he will suffer, and he will be humiliated for every second of it. We've taken his hands, we've taken his feet. We've taken his nose, his tongue, his eyes. He will never walk again, nor will he ever wield a sword again. He will not smell, taste, speak, or see ever again in his life. But his ears will never be harmed, as per the law. Because with his unharmed ears, he will hear every jeer that comes his way. He will hear every woman who cries in shock at his fate, and every child who screams in horror. Every second of his miserable, pathetic little life will be spent in misery and damnation, because he will always hear the world that hates him with his perfect ear. The crowd didn't move. Neither did they speak. They'd somehow been brought down from their primal frenzy and coerced into cooperation. There was a minute of contemplative silence before Judge Rithel cleared his throat. Are we ready to move on to the trial now? He asked the High Judge hesitantly. Yes, please, Snittler said with a dismissive wave of his hand. And guards, keep patrolling the area in case the Plague Rebels do decide to attack. You may find a scout or something, I don't know. Somebody get rid of this blubbering idiot already. Capture man, where are you? The capture man took his eyes away from the imager, briefly lit a torch he'd brought with him. Good. Just make sure that the imager has a clear shot of Judge Rithel and I, as well as the defendant here. As you wish, Your High Honor, the capture man replied, adjusting the imager. Images were magical objects that could capture either individual moments or events over periods of time, which could then be viewed later. When a moment of time was captured, it was called an image. When a period of time was captured, it was called a sequence. And then there were films, which were longer than sequences and comprised of multiple ones that usually depicted a story or event. In the Leposian territories, though, they were usually meant for propaganda reasons, to be shown in town squares and festivals. The capture man had grown up in a military family, who were also devout Tribularians, and all while growing up, his family had blindly and faithfully believed in the high society of Trebelair. Trebelair was the god of material beauty and mortal pleasures, and also the central deity of Trebelarianism, a patriarchal offshoot of the more matriarchal religion of Masthinianism, which worshipped a wide variety of gods and goddesses. However, Trebelarians considered Trebelair to be the only true god, and all others to be false idols. Trebellarianism was also the official religion of the high society countries, though in years past people didn't care as much about what religion other people followed. It just happened to be that Trebellarianism was the dominant religion. That is, until the rebellion started. After that, Trebellarianism became a mandatory religion. To be a non-believer was basis enough for a witch trial, which was as good as a death sentence. Because of this shift to not only religious but military totalitarianism, the capture man found himself increasingly sympathetic with the plague rebels. He also found himself increasingly questioning his faith in Trebellaire, often going through periods of total disbelief. It was hard for him, though, to totally abandon the superficial ideology so ingrained in him. Yet while it was true that he secretly sympathized with the plague rebels, the plague doctors were a different matter entirely. Just the thought of them alone was enough to send chills down the captureman's spine. He'd seen sequences of attacks from them, and to say that they were terrifying was a bit of an understatement. They attacked at night, swooping in without any warning, slaughtering anyone who got in their path, whether they be civilian or not. Their attacks were seemingly random too, and almost always when least expected. Just the sight of the black figures with their distinctive, beaked, black skeletal masks was enough to let you know there was going to be slaughter within seconds. And unless you were already well hidden or astronomically lucky, you were as good as dead. Those in the rebellion who used magic against the Progressive High Alliance were considered black magicians. But if the plague rebels were magicians of black magic, then the plague doctors must be harbingers of death itself. In fact, the plague doctors were the exact reason that the capture man had to remain hidden, because recently they'd been kidnapping capture men that worked for the high society and destroying all of the sequences they had with them. And the high society certainly liked their propaganda. Of course, he didn't dare voice any of these opinions to anyone else, as the reasons why were directly below him, one with her head in the noose, and the other a bloody wreck of a man. "All right," Judge Rithel said to the quiet audience with a business-like clap of his hands. "Now that we've settled back down, I think it's time to read the charges. Can we do that without having another riot break out? Yes? Good. Now, as you know, we've gathered here tonight to conduct the trial against yet another heretic, another traitor, another witch, another plague rebel." The crowd hissed and booed in hatred at the witch. Now, settle down, Judge Rithel ordered calmly, after letting them express their contempt for a few moments. "Now, for the charges at hand. Heretic, the High Court, on behalf of the High Society, has brought you here, this being the night of Friday, March 17th, 5665 of the Second Age, on the basis of your expressed views against the High Society, the High Court, the Progressive High Alliance, and Trebellaire himself. You are charged with heresy, as well as witchcraft. Though no physical or eyewitness evidence is currently available to validify the charge of witchcraft, it has been decreed by the High Court that any person or persons who is in possession of such blasphemous ideas as yourself must be a sympathizer with the rebellion, and therefore a practitioner of black magic. Do you have anything to say in your defense, Heretic?" "Bite my fucking ass, you societal pig," she growled, hawking a fat loogie in the judge's eye. This was immediately met by a huge outcry from the crowd, many of whom resorted to throwing rocks and liquor bottles at her. Quiet, or you shall all be charged with attempted treason," High Judge Snittler screeched, successfully silencing the outburst. "Control yourselves, people. This criminal will get her punishment yet, but be patient. If you can't control yourselves, then we'll be forced to do it for you. Now please, Judge Rithel, go on." "Right. Thank you, Your High Honor. Anyways, as proposed by the High Jury and approved by High Judge Snidler and I, the defendant shall receive the mandatory punishment for the crimes committed. As I'm sure all of you will know well by now, heresy is punishable by public whipping, and witchcraft is punishable by public hanging, using a bigotry and noose. so that the suffering of the defendant may be maximized to reflect the damage inflicted upon the high society.
Hey, do it while she's naked.
A drunken man from the back hollered, with a noticeable slur in his voice. This proposition was met with a resounding cheer from the men. A nasty grin spread across the district judge's face. "You want her stripped naked?" he asked lasciviously.
Yeah.
The men confirmed with a rumbling cheer. "Very well then. Wallace, please take off her clothes before you begin the whipping."
Will do gladly, Your Honor.
The executioner said with a leer towards the woman in the noose. "And Ray," Riddle added in an undertone, "you must take the lashes standing up. If you fall, your suffering will be just that much worse." "How many lashes, Your Honor?" Wallace asked as he ripped off the woman's shirt. "I'll tell you when to stop." Part 4. The sharpshooter peered through the scope of his rifle, watching as the woman they were there to rescue was whipped naked with angry, painful tears streaming down her face. "Gutch, you done taking care of those guards they sent blundering into the woods?" he hissed into his mic irritably.
Almost. Just be patient, Maze. How's the situation in the gallows?
Gutch asked, who was both Maze's close friend and commander. "Still being whipped. I'd say it's almost done, so I'd hurry up if I were you. Oh, and our spy in the audience just told me that before we got there, they gave one of the guardsmen the pain. Thought he was a spy sent to assassinate the 2 judges and rescue the witch."
Oh, fucking pigs.
Gutch scoffed.
Never afraid to turn on one of their own to keep the rest of the sheep in line. So, assume he's still alive?
Well, that's what our man said.
All right. Try and rescue him as well, then. I'm sure he'll be a little more sympathetic towards the rebellion after getting the pain for no good reason.
Well, hurry the fuck up. God, blood and little bits of skin are everywhere. The poor woman is in fucking shreds.
All right, we get it. We're almost done. Just keep your sights on the High Judge and tell us when they hang her, if it gets to that.
Well, they're getting ready for it now, actually. Checking the noose. Getting the crowd excited. Yep, there she goes.
Do we have 2 or 3 minutes to finish up here?
The sharpshooter unconsciously checked the time signature of his scope. "Yeah, but damn, hurry up. They may tie big Ultrian nuts, but that doesn't mean the victims can last forever."
Okay, give us about 3 minutes. I'll tell you when you can fire the shot.
"Yes, sir, Gutch."
Still have a line of sight with the High Judge?
"Yes, sir."
What about the District Judge?
"That as well, sir."
All right, just await my word. Keep those lines of sight.
"Aye, aye, Captain," he confirmed with a sigh. Oh, no pressure, the sharpshooter thought nervously to himself. No pressure at all. Despite his cool outward demeanor, the sharpshooter was actually a very nervous-natured man, full of self-doubt, and he was definitely feeling that right about then. If they were to rescue the prisoner and assassinate both judges in one go, then it was crucial that he didn't miss the first shot, because then they could go find cover and potentially escape. It was also important that he at least get the High Judge first, since he had the larger influence. The rifle, or wands as most people referred to them, that the sharpshooter was using was a prototype, and an old one at that. The proper name for that kind of gun was a photon-emitting long-range rifle, though only geeks called it that. Most people simply referred to them as photon rifles or photon guns, if referring to the non-rifle variants. Photon guns, unlike 99% of the guns used in the war, fired streams of highly concentrated photons instead of bullets or shells. The photons were so highly energized that they were lethal due to their absurd level of radioactivity. In addition, the photons' wavelengths were beyond the visible spectrum. Combine that with being almost completely silent, photon rifles were the ultimate tool for long-range assassination. The only problem was that the gun had to be attached to a collapsible photon generator, and this particular prototype only had about 1.5 seconds of use before the system had to cool off, which itself was a 10-minute process. Luckily, the shut-off system was automatic, because if the insulation inside the generator was compromised, then the whole thing could explode violently. The price to have this smuggled out of Calamar Corporate, the company-owned country that was the world's only manufacturer of magical objects, had been astronomical. At the time, though, this new advancement in weaponry had been exciting stuff, and everybody in the rebellion had been dying to get their hands on one of them. The sharpshooter was just glad that it hadn't come out of his pocket. In fact, it had been a gift presented as a thank you for moving from his esteemed position within the Plague Rebels to a new position with the Plague Doctors. Now, of course, the photon rifle wasn't exactly the ideal gun for the task at hand, because of its limitations for taking out multiple targets. But his other rifle, the one that shot actual bullets, had broken earlier that day, and guns weren't exactly a common commodity. Damn. Dutch's voice crackled over the radio. Every single one of those motherfuckers was carrying nothing but a sword and crossbow. Now you'd think they'd at least have a gun or two, seeing as the High Judge of fucking Bigotry is there. So, take it that you've got all of them, the sharpshooter asked. Yep, you're good to go. All right. The sharpshooter closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried in vain to clear his mind. He opened his eyes, heart pumping like a cannon in his head. He lined up the sights with the High Judge's head, held his breath, pulled down on the trigger for a little more than half a second before releasing it. And down went the High Judge. Knowing that he only had moments to act, the sharpshooter lined up the sights with the district judge's panicking head. With the photon generator at 51% heat capacity, he let loose until the automatic shutoff kicked in. Down too went the district judge. Almost immediately, the densely populated clearing was swarmed by a mass of plague doctors with guns crackling and people screaming. The sharpshooter had a sinking feeling as he watched his fellow plague doctors push inwards like a murder of shadowy crows, slaughtering every man, woman, and child who stood in their way. The screams were deafening, and the sharpshooter found himself trying to cover his ears, but to no avail. The gunfire, the chem bombs, the screams, the cries, was tearing his mind apart, ripping his soul to shreds. He tried to close his eyes, but the faces of all the innocent people he'd killed before flashed before his eyes. He heard their screams, he heard their pleas, the heart-wrenching, soul-crushing guilt and shame that kept him up at night and that had been looming over his head like a dark shadow during the past few missions came trickling, bubbling, roaring up like some great, raging demon, devouring him from the inside out. In that moment, all his hatred for the high society and the progressive High Alliance was focused inwards on himself, so that there was nothing more in the world that he desired other than to be destroyed. We got him. The witch and the guard that was tortured. Everyone else is dead. Except ourselves, of course. We suffered no casualties. How many are dead? The sharpshooter asked hesitantly. At least 100 pigs down, maybe more. Why? The sharpshooter put down the photon rifle and unholstered his handgun. Hello? Gutch's voice crackled from far away. Maze turned off the radio, put the gun to his head.
So, my dear friends, as I mentioned previously, I am actually on holiday now. I'm back in Turkey, where I used to live for many, many years, on vacation, having fun, but I still managed to get a lot of stuff recorded before I left, so yeah, I'm coming to you from the past, a few weeks in the past. Not that it makes any difference, but yeah, trying to get a bit of sun and relaxation for a while before back to work in September. So I hope you enjoyed that one. I love these sort of different fantasy world kind of stories. I don't do them very often, but I always a joy for me to do. Well, my dear friends, that's it for this evening. I'll be back again very soon. Kind of do know what with, but yeah, I've got a few things recorded, so let's see what takes my fancy for uploading next time. Till then, my dear friends, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye.
thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.